Good morning. Whether you're with us here in person or watching at home, it's good to be with you this morning. It's good for all of us to be together. Unitarian Universalism is a religious tradition which celebrates the diversity of the human family. We see differences not as defects to be hidden, but as strengths to be shared. We see differences not as deficits to overcome, but as gifts to be appreciated. We celebrate this diversity not only because we know this is the path for each of us to live our fullest and deepest, richest life possible for us, but because we also know that if we are going to save the world, it will take each one of us and the uniqueness we bring. Come, my friends, with our hearts open to both the challenges and the possibilities that this new day and new week bring, with our hearts open to all that inspires, sustains, redeems, and transforms us. Come, let us worship together.
This may not be your typical church song, but it's really joyful, and we hope you like it a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I were a fish and you caught me, you'd say, look at that fish shimmering in the sun. Such a rare one, can't believe that you caught one. And if I were a fish and you caught me, you'd say, look at that fish, heaviest in the sea. You'd win first prize if you caught me. Why is everybody on the internet so mean? Why is everybody so afraid of what they've never seen? If I was scrolling through and I saw me flopping around and singing my song, I'd say, damn, they're cute and sing along. If I were a rock, you would pick me up and say, that's a nice rock, skippiest on the lake. Plop, 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 I'm the perfect shape. And if I were a sock, you would put me on and say, that's a nice sock, happiest as a pair. I found you, now I'm not scared. Why is everybody on the internet so mean? Why is everybody so afraid of what they've never seen? If I was scrolling through and I saw me flopping around and singing my song, I'd say, damn, they're cute and sing along. How lucky are we of all the fish in the sea? You get to be you, I get to be me. Just let him be mean. We're as free as can be, to be the youest of you, to be the meest of me. If I were a fish, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. If I were a fish, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. If I were a fish, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. If I were a fish, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Thank you, Jean Marie. That is quite a joyful song. The flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the liberal religious tradition to which this congregation belongs. Will those of you here in person please stand as you are willing and able for our chalice lighting? If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it with me at this time. As we kindle this flame, we recommit ourselves to nurturing the spirits of one another and the common good of the world we share. May the light of this flame be welcoming to all who seek a liberal religious home. For those of you already standing, I invite you to remain standing for our opening hymn. Our opening hymn this morning is number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
And first, and then as a two-part round. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come this half. Come, come, whoever you are. 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 Come yet again, come. Come yet again, come.
To those of you visiting us for the first time this morning, I offer you an extra special welcome. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, we are intentionally inclusive. We're liberally religious and actively serving the common good of our shared world. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your own spiritual journey, you are welcome here. If you are visiting us for the first time in person, I invite you to stop by our welcome stand in the foyer if you haven't already done so. You can fill out our visitor form and get a name tag and pick up one of our pamphlets. To learn more about UUFR and Unitarian Universalism. If you are visiting us online, I invite you to fill out our visitor form at UUFR/visitor form. If you do this, you'll start receiving our weekly e-newsletter called the Chalice. UUFR members can also pick up one of our new business cards. They're kind of like a business card size cheat sheet for when you find yourself speaking with people about Unitarian Universalism and UUFR. This morning, Will Smith, raise your hand, Will. Thank you, Will. Will Smith, who is one of our lay ministers, will be available in the front right corner of the sanctuary after the service to speak with anyone who might be experiencing difficult challenges, circumstances, and situations in their lives and just want to talk to someone. I hope all of you will read through or reread through the Chalice that you received by email on Thursday. It describes everything amazing that's going on here at UUFR. Our in-person social hour this morning will happen downstairs in Founders Hall. I hope that you will also stop by and visit our groups who will be at the tables after service in Founders Hall. This morning, the groups that you'll see downstairs include the Crop Walk and the Committee on Ministry. There will also be a newcomer gathering after the service this morning in the music room. This will be led by Annie Wheelis, our Congregational Life Coordinator. This is a chance to learn more about Unitarian Universalism and UUFR, and to ask any questions you may have. I now invite you to meet and greet your neighbor. It is my hope. It is my hope. It is my hope. It is my hope that these conversations in person, it is my hope that you will sit down. It is my hope, it is my dear hope that these wonderful, energizing conversations will continue after the service. This is the time in our service, though, where we acknowledge some of the joys and sorrows in our community. We do this because we believe that a joy that is shared is a joy that is made even bigger and greater when it is shared, and that a sorrow shared is made easier to bear. Anyone is invited to email a joy or sorrow to joysandsorrows@uufr.org before 9 a.m. on Sunday. And you are also invited to light a candle before the service, and if you wish, you can fill out one of the cards if you'd like your joy or sorrow shared with the congregation. This morning, Amy would like to wish Kim Hogan a very happy birthday today. Kim Hogan, happy birthday. Reverend James also asked us to light a candle this morning because we grieve for the loss of life in Israel and Gaza. We lift up our hope that all of those involved in this conflict may resolve this conflict soon and peacefully. As we hold these shared joys and sorrows in our heart and reflect on the joys, sorrows, fears, and hopes of our own lives, let's be together in silence, opening ourselves to that spirit within us and amidst us, called by many names but known to every human heart, that leads us to a fuller, deeper, richer experience of life. After the silence, we'll sing hymn number 95, There is More Love Somewhere, but now let's be together in silence. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere.
There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
More than half of the members of UUFR have participated in our Living the Pledge to End Racism workshops. Dana Maddox is here this morning to tell us more about this fall's workshops.
Good morning, everyone. I guess I don't need to say my name, she just said it, but I'm Dana. And can you put the picture up? Yeah, okay. And I'd like to talk about how important it is to attend the outstanding, free, and life-changing Living the Pledge Against Racism workshops offered here at UUFR. While we are thrilled that over half of the congregation has attended, that still leaves almost half of the congregation that has not attended. Just gonna point that out. So I stood in this same spot a few years ago and shared how my participation in LTP opened my eyes, my mind, and most importantly, my heart. Now as co-chair of the Anti-Racism Ministry, a member of the AIR Board Committee and the LTP Coordinating Committee, I am not just being, but I'm actively leading the change I want to see in the world. The picture you see above me, there they are, is most of my family at my niece's wedding in 2019. As you can see from this picture, my family is racially diverse. I am auntie to over 20 black nieces, nephews, great-nieces, and great-nephews. While you might not be able to see from this picture, my family also has significant socioeconomic diversity. As a child of poverty, I grew up in poor neighborhoods where pretty much all of our neighbors and most of our friends were people of color. Consequently, I had no doubt going into the LTP workshop that there could not be a less racist white person on this planet than yours truly. And while my secondhand experiences with the racial discrimination my friends were subjected to made me aware at an early age of the privilege that even a poor white girl enjoys, I firmly believed that I had never and would never actively contribute in any way to white supremacy. One of the first things I learned in this workshop was the true definition of white supremacy, and it isn't Nazis and the KKK. Something that took longer to sink in was the fact that as a white American, it is impossible that I haven't participated in and benefited from the pervasive structural racism in our country that our country was built on and still embraces today. It wasn't until George Floyd was murdered in broad daylight while multiple people pled for his life with absolutely no impact on the actions of the police, who clearly had zero doubt that they would literally get away with murder, that I truly understood the horrendous situation our country finds itself in. I am confident many of you saw that video. Because you were there marching with me in the middle of a pandemic, I know that many of you were moved in that moment to action. I had hoped that most Americans would finally start demanding change. But where are we today? In a country overwhelmed with chaos, chaos that saps our energy and keeps us from focusing on urgent issues. The school-to-prison pipeline that continues to enslave Americans, predominantly Americans of color, so that states can benefit from their unpaid labor is a thriving multi-million-dollar business. George Floyd wasn't the last to die of white supremacy and misuse of power, and yet public support for meaningful change is fading. While that may sound depressing and even daunting, for me, awareness has been empowering. Now that my eyes are open, it is clear that my personal action is needed. It is also easy to see that something small, lasting just a few hours over 2 days, can affect real change. I am bringing what I learn into my interactions at work, at church, with my family, and in the community. I've had more conversations, and most importantly, effective and meaningful conversations about racism since I took this workshop a few years ago than I had the entire rest of my life. And anyone who has met me knows it wasn't for lack of talking. So please, if you haven't yet participated in this workshop, consider signing up for the upcoming session on October 21st and 28th. Registration is open until Wednesday, and we still haven't reached the 12 attendee minimum, which means we may have to cancel the session. My husband often says that there is nothing more dangerous than a person who knows they are right. I would elaborate on that to say there is no one more uninformed than those who think they already know everything important about, well, anything really. I promise, because I have attended this workshop multiple times now as a facilitator, and I learn something new every time, that in this workshop you will learn something. You'll find others to work alongside, and I believe if enough of us work together in small, meaningful ways, we will make our world a better place for everyone in my family, no matter the color of their skin. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. I can attest that it is an incredible, amazing, insightful workshop. The amazing, affirming work that we do at UUFR, including all of these classes, workshops, and other educational opportunities that we offer, all of this work is only possible because of the generous financial support so many of you provide. If you would like to make a contribution this morning, we invite you to bring it forward to one of our offering plates. If you are having trouble moving this morning, just raise your hand and we will gladly come get it for you. And if you may also use one of the options that you will see on the screen. It is now time for this morning's offering. Please be generous. This morning, Reverend James is exchanging pulpits with Lisa Bovee Kemper, the interim lead minister at the Unitarian Universalist community of Charlotte. That means that Reverend James is preaching this morning in Charlotte, and Reverend Lisa is here with us. Lisa holds a BA in history from Oberlin College and a Master of Divinity from Andover Newton Theological School, which is now part of the Yale School of Divinity in New Haven, Connecticut. Before beginning her study in the ministry, she worked as a costume designer and wardrobe supervisor for theater, dance, and opera productions, most notably at the Juilliard School. She is thus an artist and an activist, a pastor, and a preacher. She is skilled in organizational assessment, and she approaches complex problems with curiosity. She is passionate about creating meaningful, collaborative worship services and empowering congregations to identify and live into their mission. She has been active in social justice movements ranging from LGBTQIA+, inclusion to immigration rights, to reproductive justice. In 2013, she was a founding member of the steering committee of the Mountain People's Assembly after participating in Moral Monday actions right here in Raleigh. Please give Reverend Lisa a warm welcome to UUFR.
Thank you so much for your warm welcome. It's good to be here. I was here in this space yesterday for the UU Justice North Carolina convening, but before that, the last time I had been here was for one or another Moral Monday convening action, celebration, whatever one of those many, many things we did here in Raleigh in 2013. And I continue to be grateful for the work that you all do as a congregation being here in our capital, and I bring greetings from the congregation in Charlotte. Our first reading is by Mary Oliver, hopefully a familiar one of my favorites. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voice behind, the stars began to burn through the sheet of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life that you could save. And the second reading by Marge Piercy. What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can set you up, they can bust you, they can break your fingers, they can burn your brain with electricity, blur you with drugs till you can't walk, can't remember. They can take your child, wall up your lover. They can do anything you can't stop them from doing. How can you stop them? Alone, you can fight, you can refuse, you can take what revenge you can, but they roll over you. But two people fighting back to back can cut through a mob. A snake-dancing file can break a cordon. An army can meet an army. Two people can keep each other sane, can give support, conviction, love, massage, hope, sex. Three people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With 4, you can play bridge and start an organization. With 6, you can rent a whole house, eat pie for dinner with no seconds, and hold a fundraising party. 12 make a demonstration. 100 fill a hall. 1,000 have solidarity and your own newsletter. 10,000 power and your own paper. 100,000 your own media. 10 million your own country. It goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again and they said no. It starts when you say we and know who you mean. And each day you mean one more.
In 2nd grade, I didn't like dolls. I liked to ride on my skateboard. My dad was confused and he'd say, "Did God get you wrong?" I didn't know what to tell him. I was just 7 years old. Now that I'm older, oh, I've been wondering, was he on to something? Maybe I'm just an alien fallen to earth. I try to fit in, but there's so much to learn. I'm so scared for the day that somebody finds out what I am. When I was 10, there was a boy who I said that I had a crush on, but that was a lie for my friends. And when he found out, we had a talk in the backyard. Our friendship was never the same. Now that I'm older, oh, I think I knew he's different too. Maybe I'm just an alien fallen to earth. I try to fit in, but there's so much to learn. I'm so scared for the day that somebody finds out what I am. I am sweet, I am kind, do my best all the time. There are things I regret and sometimes I forget. I'm not me perfectly, but I'm perfectly me. And I'm starting to love all the things that I am. Maybe I'm just an alien fallen to earth. I try to fit in, but there's so much to learn. Is it so bad to feel? I'll figure out what I am. I said it out loud, so I think you all know what I am.
Thank you so much. It was 9 years ago next week that I officiated one of the first legal same-gender weddings in North Carolina. I think you all might have had one right at about exactly the same time here. There were 2 or 3 other weddings that happened at the same time, and we never figured out who was actually first. But I think it's pretty amazing that there were 3 UU congregations tied for that honor. It was both a deeply personal moment and a dramatic public one. That day, dramatically public one. That day and the days leading up to it were full of gifts, both expected and surprising. It had been a long road, as you know from your work here. We had joined the Campaign for Southern Equality more than once at the Register of Deeds office in Asheville, and my wife and I had traveled all over North Carolina with the We Do campaign. We had helped with the campaign to defeat Amendment 1, and we had grieved together when it passed. So by Friday, October 10th at 5 p.m., I had moved my office to the basement of First Congregational UCC in Asheville, where the Campaign for Southern Equality offices were, and I joined a small group of community activists who were waiting for this ruling on Obergefell, mostly pretending that we were doing our regular work, constantly checking the news headlines and drinking a lot of coffee. Things were at the same time moving very quickly and slower than molasses. But once the order came, once the ruling was made and the celebration began, what was so powerful to me, whether it was that day or any other day, was how UUs everywhere showed up. How people knew we would be doing something, they knew we would be celebrating, so they came to join the party and help out wherever it was needed. Just as we often do when something bad happens. We were gathered on the steps of the Register of Deeds office, and I had multiple congregants who just heard the news and drove right to the Register of Deeds because they hadn't heard an announcement, because we hadn't had time to get one out yet, but they knew that we would be doing something. But this time, the pure joy showed on the gathered faces as folks banded together in their gold shirts, hugging and celebrating, cheering when each new couple came out with their license or was pronounced legally married on the steps. Marriage matters. It matters because of the legal rights, and it matters because calling a union of 2 people in a lifetime partnership anything other than marriage, unless it's a name they choose themselves, makes it separate but equal. And of course, that's unconstitutional. Hopefully, it will remain so. At the same time, marriage was always and ever just the beginning. Marriage equality in North Carolina didn't stop employers from being allowed to fire someone on Monday because they got married on that happy Friday. And at that time, there were 32 states in which that was still true. Marriage equality never gave trans and non-binary people non-discrimination protections, access to unbiased health care. It didn't stop the strongly held belief arguments about refusing people service due to their identity. And as you well know, in 2023, Obergefell is still under threat, and here in North Carolina and across the country, we have seen a terrifying wave of anti-trans legislation that is having real impact on real people right now in our communities. There is much work to be done, and you here at UUFR have been a powerful part of our statewide network of organizing and advocacy. The congregation I serve in Charlotte sends their gratitude to you, some of you who carried the postcards that we wrote. You carried them to the legislators here in Raleigh during our recent fight against the monster abortion bill. But I'm here to tell you, marriage is not actually the sticking point in this conversation about equality. I have a saying based on my 20 years working in churches that it's never about the hymnals. There's a joke, if you want to split a congregation, change the hymnals. Or try to paint the bathroom. People will freak out. But I hold that it's never about the hymnals. It's far easier to go 17 rounds on whether to use Fresh Kicks, Polar Bear, Magnolia, or Gardenia on your bathroom walls than it is to remember that the last time that bathroom was painted was by a group of people who founded the Congregation and are no longer here, or whatever the deeper emotional connection may be to that conflict. Our response to difficult issues and conversations is rooted in a deep emotional place, and in many cases, my work as a minister is to tease out what that deeper emotional response is about. Conflict is rarely resolved by solving the surface level issue. Always look deeper, it's never just about the paint. Although I think Magnolia is probably best. And so I hold that the fight against marriage equality is not fundamentally about marriage. We see over and over and over again that some opponents of equal marriage will say that they support legal rights for couples as long as it is not called marriage. We hear them say that marriage has always been between one man and one woman for the purposes of procreation, and conservative Christian opponents will say that they are fighting for biblical marriage. And that's not historically accurate or biblically accurate. So if the question of who gets to be married is not the fundamental question, then what is? Same-gender marriage is threatening because it breaks the construct of traditional gender roles. There is a religious construct in much of Western culture that holds that men are dominant and women subservient. That's the patriarchy, which I think we're all familiar with at this point. And of course, it's bigger than religion. But the religious narrative in the United States is predominantly Christian. And even outside of the US, we see the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, as largely dominant in Western culture. So that dominant narrative then is that God is male, God is in charge, and that human relationships are based on God's relationships with humans. Therefore, the man becomes like God in a relationship. That construct permeates our culture, whether we accept it or buy into it or not. Just like, I don't remember your name, but you gave the wonderful testimonial about it's not understanding what white supremacy culture is, because white supremacy culture is mixed into all of this as well. It's a construct that permeates our culture for better or for worse, so to speak. In general, fundamentalist religions of all kinds and systems that are not religious rely on this patriarchal structure, which is sometimes called the domination system, to manage relationships and to keep a level of control. This is, of course, not how we want to construct things as Unitarian Universalists, but the cultural norms around us still have an impact. Unitarian Universalism, as we practice it today, is a product of US American norms, which are steeped in white supremacy culture, colonialism, and patriarchy. Traditional gender roles are part of the racist and misogynist system that dominates our society. Are you with me? We see this phenomenon in the common question that queer couples get, but who's the man and who's the woman? And I'm here to tell you that it was less than 5 years ago that I last got asked that question. This question implies that there is no way to be a couple that doesn't include one male role and one female role. And further, it assumes that there is only one way to be a man and only one way to be a woman. And I am guessing that every single person in this room knows from experience that that is not true. None of that is true. And breaking that construct is the greatest gift of queer community. For centuries, queer folk have been finding ways to exist and survive in a cultural system that does not include us. We bend and we shift and we create a construct that works for us. We push the envelope. Sometimes we live at the margins. Most queer couples I know, or queer polycules, have negotiated the roles in their relationship because they don't assume that one person is the man and one the woman. And if that assumption is not fundamental, then we are not assuming that the mannish person will do manly things and the womanish person will do womanly things. There aren't very many good uses for air quotes, but I feel like that's one. We assume, as a couple, as a group in relationship, that we are individuals who have different strengths and gifts. And therefore, we create a structure to manage our family that makes sense for us in our life and relationships. And frankly, I expect that most of you who are heterosexual or not queer or not same-gender queer have done the same thing. I don't think most UUs I know have traditional gender roles, and if they do, they've chosen it because they talked about it. Gender roles and relational agreements are yet another thing that requires enthusiastic consent. So that's great, but it is also deeply threatening to the status quo because the success of the domination system, the success of the Christian nationalist, patriarchal, this is how we want to keep things forever system, it's like a game of Jenga. If you pull out the wrong block, the whole thing falls down. And with compassion and respect for each individual person's humanity, that is scary. That's scary to have a construct that rules your life that is so precarious as to rely on one Jenga block to knock it all down. The domination system's success requires that everyone stay in their place. Men should be strong and non-emotional. Women should be sexy and nurturing, but not at the same time. Black men should be thugs, poor people should stay poor, and with the rise of fascism in this country, we are seeing the status quo try very, very hard to maintain its hold. As queer folk, our willingness and ability, born of necessity, to choose our own roles, to understand that identity is complex and malleable, that is the true threat of equal marriage. We see in the history of queer life many people who went their own way. Not publicly, they may not have been out as we think of it now, but they found their way through a culture that was not welcoming. They created community with one another, created codes and signals to help keep each other safe, as any marginalized community has had to do in this white supremacy-fueled domination system. In some ways, we are still living in amazing times. So many changes have happened, and for a while, there was more safety for queer folk than we had ever imagined. But that experience was never universal, and it was never as simple as just making sure that everyone who wants to can get married. And let me be very clear. One of the things that cisgender activists said during the marriage fight that we would come back for, I'm going to use air quotes again, that we would come back for the trans folks once marriage was won. Where have I heard that before? Right, you know. White women suffragists said the same thing to black women. White feminists, straight feminists said the same thing to lesbian and black feminists. You see where the argument falls apart? A colleague said in a news interview that with marriage equality, LGBTQ couples can be as dull as everyone else. And while I get what he was trying to say, I appreciate where he's coming from, I don't agree. I don't want us to be dull. I want us to be fabulous. I want to live my own boring life with my wife and my kids, and apparently a lot of cats, in my house. But I want our community as a whole, including my family, to be able to continue to be able to push the edges of culture and expectation and continue to embrace our queer identities. I want us to stay queer. The goal is not to assimilate, but to achieve full legal equality for all of us, so that we all have the ability to live our most full and authentic lives. And I want everyone to have the opportunity to be fabulously whole, not just those of us who identify as queer. Feminism has the same intention, though it often gets a bad rap as encouraging man-hating. Oh, wait, man-hating? I'm a man-hating feminist. But the truth is that the more of us who are able to live out our true identity free of gender stereotypes and expectations, the more whole we all can be. Intersectionality is real, and it is central. It is the foundation of this struggle for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. UUs know that like love, justice is multiplied when it is shared. If I can live out my own truth, I'm more likely to want you to live out yours. This community is one that celebrates all paths, that wants everyone to find a place in society, that answers the call of love in many different ways. So I return to the words of Mary Oliver. One day she finally knew she had to save the only life she could save, which was her own. With authenticity and self-awareness, what is your inner voice telling you? How do you honor your whole self? And that is where our work in this community begins, to find ways to help one another discern and listen to that inner voice, to save the lives we can save, starting with our own. If I claim my queer self, I am modeling that possibility for others. And the same is true for you, whatever your identity. This idea of queerness offers a possibility to all. For me, it is the fundamental construct that drives my constant work for justice, equity, access, compassion, and love for all. But that's not where it starts, that's just where it begins. Because then we must reach out, not later, but now, and make sure we aren't leaving anyone behind. Because it goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again and they say no. It starts when you say we and you know who you mean. And each day you mean one more. So this coming out day, I invite you to think about the ways that you allow the status quo to influence your life. How does your fear or caring about the expectations of others stop you from being who you are? And you're going to have to interrogate your own identity, social location, level of privilege. For some of you, being the most authentic you means staying in the closet for now. And that's okay. We've got you. And you come out when you're ready. For those of you who have more privilege, for those of us who have more privilege, we have more to interrogate about how we participate in the status quo. How does your fear or caring about the expectations of others stop you from being who you are? How does your fear or caring about the expectations of others stop you from reaching out your hand and saying, yes, one more. Yes, come. More people are part of our we. Sorry about that. Coming Out Day is a day to think about and talk about our experiences and stories of living our truth. It's an opportunity to show folks who are in the closet that another way is possible, that we are here when they are ready. But coming out is a lifelong process, no matter your gender or sexual orientation or identity of any kind. It is a lifelong process. Learning to speak your personal truth and honor your own needs and self is a lifelong process. So is reaching out our hands to the next person. Friends, let us be guides for each other. Let us say we and know who we mean. And let us never, ever, ever stop fighting until all of us are free. May it be so. Amen and blessed be. I invite you to rise if you wish and sing our closing hymn, number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see the things in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
As we end this time of worship together, may we do so with ever more love for one another, with ever more gratitude for this precious gift of life we share this very day, with ever more peace in our hearts, and with ever more hope for our own lives and this world we share. Amen.